And here we are back again for another episode of the AutoTrader Podcast. And my name is Wandile Sishi, once again joined by George Mienie. How was your weekend, George?
Yeah, Wendy, how's it? It was good. If you're talking about last weekend, that is.
Why last weekend and not this weekend? Because technically, when we're recording now, it would be...
Well, it's towards the end of the week. So I suppose, last weekend.
Yeah.
Last weekend. Yeah, the weekend gone by. The one that's just happened.
The one we just had.
Yes, the one we just had. I was like thinking to myself, when does this show air? And am I going to predict the future? No. So I went to go and fly my airplane.
Yeah.
Did a couple of rounds around the cabbage patch.
Yeah.
That's always nice to do. But other than that, no, pretty chilled.
I did some gardening, and I'm getting used to just gardening as a young man, and yeah, I'm starting to enjoy it. Might be my new thing.
Green
Might
fingers?
just get you like a little plant. Who knows? Anyways, in today's episode, we are doing the Electric Avenue episode, and it's going to be a little bit different because I'll be asking you about your experience of owning an EV for the past year. We'll then just going to get into talking what EVs have done or how they've changed in the last, 9 months since you've gotten your iPace. And I think you've driven quite a few then, so I think we'll get some great insights there. And then lastly, we'll just jump into this new fuel and Eskom woes that we're feeling and how it's impacted any EV owner.
Well, I think I've driven every EV in the market.
I think you have, yeah.
I think I've driven every EV in the market at the moment,
And
except for this one, which I'm taking home today.
Correct. And I think that's why it's going to be interesting, because now we'll know what do the new Gen EVs feel like compared to the older ones. So
I can already tell you from driving a couple of them versus my iPace.
Yeah.
So
I'm looking forward to it. But let's unpack. So at the time when you bought the EVs, there was kind of 5 on the market. I think it was the iPace, the Mini SE, the BMW i3, the Porsche Taycan, and then the Nissan Leaf, which was secondhand. Not sure if you drove that one.
I have not driven the Leaf. That's correct.
So that's this is a 10-year-old EV, so I don't think we should consider that one.
Yeah, I've been inside the Leaf, but never driven it.
Yeah,
nothing inspires me to drive it.
And when you first got your iPace, what were your expectations coming into an EV?
Well, I was fortunate enough that before I bought the iPace, probably about a year before I bought it, I got to drive it for a week.
Yeah,
and I instantly fell in love with it. That particular iPace, I fell in love with straight away. The iPace was actually one of the first ones I drove in South Africa, and then everything else
was benchmarking to that.
Yeah, I was benchmarking to that, which is slightly unfair because the iPace is 90 kilowatt hour battery.
Yeah.
It's a really quick car. The build quality is good. It's a Jaguar. So everything else I drove except for the Porsche Taycan, didn't quite compare.
Would you say that at the time when it came out, it was definitely, if you consider value, price, range, and experience, you think it was the best place to be as someone who's trying to experience what an EV is like?
The iPace, definitely, most definitely. The downside, as we know, is the price point.
Yeah.
You don't get a vehicle like that at the magic number of under 500,000 rand. Maybe sometime in the future when the second-hand car prices drop. But I suppose that was the downside of driving that particular car first. Was it set a very high benchmark.
So 9 months later now, you've kind of experienced the iPace and you've driven essentially, let's start with these 5. Would you say that what people believe in EV, well, let's take your experience. Do you believe that your expectations were met when you drove all of them, or was it very different from car to car?
It was very similar in terms of the EV characteristics. So the thing I loved about the BMW i3 was the futuristic look. The iPace doesn't have that.
Yeah,
okay.
For sure.
So the iPace still feels like a regular Jaguar.
Yeah, for sure.
Until it starts rolling, then it's an EV. Other than that, it still feels like a Jaguar. Although the iPace was designed from the ground up as an EV, it's not a retrofitted EV. The i3, on the other hand, was very much futuristic. You know, the interior of the car is made of eco-friendly material.
Yeah.
The car looks futuristic.
For sure, yeah.
I'm actually sad that they're not going to make it anymore.
But there's going to be bigger and better things, you would only hope and assume.
Well, I mean, and then later on I got to drive the iX40.
Yeah, coming into that. So at essentially now in 2022, I think there's going to be 13 new EVs that are essentially going to be available in the market. I'm not going to go through the first 5, but essentially we got the Audi e-tron that's, you know, got 2 different variants. We've got the GT and the Quattro. The Sportback, sorry. Then we have the iX, which comes in 2 variants, the BMW i4, iX3, this beautiful car here, and then 4 different Mercedes-Benz variants. Are you anticipating any of these? Are you excited for any of these? And I know you've driven basically all the BMWs that are still coming out.
So I'm excited for all of them. Let's kind of put it that way, because I want to experience every single EV that comes into the market. So that's my objective, and not necessarily to compare them with each other, but just to see, as the technology advances, what different features do the cars come with. Like, I'll give you an example. The iX40, which is I drove the e-tron after the iX40, but I had the iX40 for a week. BMW was kind enough to give it to me for a week, and I drove it on a long distance drive to the middle of the Free State.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that was an amazingly comfortable car and very futuristic. I'd say more futuristic than the BMW i3.
Okay.
And you can see that car had been designed to be an EV. It's not a retrofitted BMW, although they try to bring the BMW, the essence of the BMW into the car. For instance, the grille with that self-healing technology, but it's still got the kidneys.
Yeah.
But the technology in that car was just something else. Initially, when I first got into the iX40, I looked at the menus when I left Joburg, and I was like, this is way too complicated. There's too much information here. But it's amazing what one's brain does.
After like a few minutes of kind of experiencing something.
Well, I'd say a couple of hours.
Yeah.
I'm not that
depending
far.
on you.
Yeah, exactly. After a couple of hours of fiddling with the car, I actually knew my way around that menu pretty well.
So I'm trying to be as honest as possible for anybody who's watching this. Would you say that, I guess the initial first 5 EVs versus the new ones, do they stack up to each other? Is it a completely different experience?
Yeah, the first generation to second generation EVs are totally different.
So
even my Jaguar I-Pace versus the new one is different in terms of the software. The interior of the new Jaguar I-Pace is identical. It's just the software experience is different, and some of the features.
It's kind of like you're stepping into a new time, really. But in terms of the EV, like driving experience, is pretty much the same.
Pretty much the same, yeah. So it's all pretty much the same. I mean, I was very impressed with the Porsche Taycan.
Yeah.
The Porsche Taycan felt like you were getting into a Porsche. So
for sure.
It didn't feel like you were getting into a futuristic car, whereas the iX40 felt like you were getting into a futuristic car.
BMW.
Yes.
Whereas with Porsche, it felt like just any other Porsche.
Yes. So that's why Porsche was Porsche. Porsche's is up there. You drive the 911 or any other Porsche for that matter.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same when you get into the car until you switch it on.
Yeah.
Whereas BMW was different. And then the Mini SE and the BMW i3, older generation, you can feel the newer ones are newer in terms of software, the way the screens are, the size of the screen. Size of the screens are big deal.
They're getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
That's a big outrageous
deal. Yes. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about your just to sum up this section here. Let's talk about kind of how your life has changed since owning an electric vehicle. Has it even changed?
I never thought about power consumption like I think about power consumption, or should I say energy consumption, not power consumption. Energy consumption like I think about energy consumption today. It never crossed my mind.
Is it the same as how somebody who drives an internal combustion engine thinks about petrol, or is it completely different?
Probably conserving fuel to a certain degree, yes. But my perception of energy management and understanding the energy production versus energy storage, not only with the EV, but also how does it get to the EV and what's the most efficient way to get it there?
It's made your entire life a lot more sustainable, if that makes sense. It's kind of made you not necessarily change or convert to going solar, for instance, but it's made you think about these things a lot more.
Yeah, I don't want to pay Eskom.
Makes sense. I don't think anybody does.
So that's my objective is off the grid to prove that it can be done, and it's really tough to do. You sit from a theoretical point of view, as an armchair expert, not really having experienced these things, and people talk about, I've gone off the grid. I've met a few of my own friends. Oh no, I'm off the grid, and I know what it takes to get off the grid. And I take a look at what they've installed. They're not off the grid. Yeah,
there's quite a few things that you need to do to be completely fully.
In order to be off the grid with an EV, you need at least a minimum 15 kilowatt inverters.
Yeah.
Okay. Because your car is going to draw half of that just to charge.
Okay.
Okay. The other half is there to run your house. So you need at least 15 kilowatts. A single inverter, which today is somewhere between 7 and 8 kilowatts, is not going to be enough to charge the car and run your house. You're going to have to choose.
Speaking on this exact topic, I think in the EV road test you were talking about, I think you're speaking to Jason, you were saying that you can't just plug in your car into your wall. You're going to burn out your extension cable if you do that. So what are the 5 things, if you had to just do, let's talk about 5 things that you had to unlearn and relearn about owning an EV, such as charging, how you can charge, what's the best way to do that?
Well, like I said, power, energy consumption. So, for instance, a silly thing like an extension cord. The cables inside an extension cord come in different sizes. 0.5 millimeter, 1 millimeter, 1.5 millimeter, 2.5 up to 2.5 millimeters.
Okay.
And these cars, like this Volvo P8 XC40 Recharge, these cars pull through a normal wall socket 3 point something kilowatts at a constant rate.
Okay.
If the extension cable that you've plugged the car's charging cable into is not equipped to pull that kind of power, it's going to generate heat and then it's going to melt. And something's going to burn down.
Has this ever happened to you, or is this something that you were told very early, don't use an extension cord?
I was told very early. Well, somebody put a video on the internet saying, don't use the car's 3-pin wall socket charger. Rubbish. They are designed to plug into a 3-pin plug. Okay, so the charger that comes with the car that plugs into the 3-pin plug, they're designed not to overheat. It's the people that plug it into an extension cord that goes into the wall that could burn their house down.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people, I assume that you can just, I could be out at a braai or something and be like, hey, just pass me the extension cord so I can charge my car.
No, you need a serious extension cord to handle the power consumption of these cars. Another thing I learned was the different energy draws at different places within your life. For instance, most homes have got single phase electricity. And single phase electricity, you can only pull that 3-odd kilowatts out of the wall unless you install the wall box charger, and then your maximum draw is about 7.7 kilowatts. So if you've got a 90 kilowatt car, you can see it's going to take 12 hours from 0 to full.
Yeah.
Okay. If you've got 3-phase on the other hand, like for instance, our building that we're sitting in here has 3-phase electricity, then you can pull up to 20 something kilowatts at one time, which means you can charge the car within 4 hours.
A few hours, yeah. I mean, it's a lot to unpack. I think a lot of people don't know this information, and I'm glad that we're getting a little bit more of insights into this. But yeah, I think that kind of summarizes the first section of just kind of understanding what is your experience in the last 9 months. Kind of to summarize that, I'd like to know, was it worth it? Do you think the switch to an EV was worth it? Is it something that you would change? Is it something that you wish you would have done differently?
I keep saying, and I've done this my whole life. I probably spend more money than I should, and some of it is wasted on bleeding edge technology.
Of course.
But what that has done in my lifetime is it's helped me learn. And this particular instance is no different. I have learned an insurmountable amount of knowledge on energy, how it works, how these cars operate, how much power they draw, how much power they use, their consumption, and then next door to that is energy production and storage of your home. So I probably, because I'm an early adopter like that of technology, I've probably spent the premium prices on the car and the home installation, and the prices are going to come down, and I'm okay with that, because for me that was school fees.
For sure. No, I understand. It makes sense. I mean, also, I think it's important to understand that different EVs are going to give you different experiences. Of those experiences, the one that kind of stood out in the last 9 months.
One car or one experience?
Let's talk about both. Was there a specific car that was like, wow, this is completely revolutionary or different? And secondly, was there an experience with a vehicle which was bizarre?
So the thing that stood out across all the EVs for me is when I went to the States many years ago, I engaged or interacted with the first ever Tesla.
Yeah.
Went to one of their showrooms and had a look at the car. Didn't drive it, okay. But because I've been in this world for almost 2 decades already, cars and understanding cars is something that just comes naturally to me. And then when I first got into my Jaguar I-Pace, I noticed a stark difference in the build quality of a Tesla versus a Jaguar. Now I think Tesla has got to that level of build quality, okay. Yes. Okay. But those initial EVs, the Tesla particularly, didn't have the build quality of these cars. Like this Volvo XC40 that I'm gonna take after this. I'm looking so forward to it.
I'm so jealous.
We had it here a couple of weeks ago.
We did, yeah.
And having a look at it, the build quality is high. So I think what the existing OEMs, their fortunate position is their level of build quality out the starting gates is good.
Yeah, I mean, they're taking technology that's already been kind of developed, being tested, and putting it in, I guess, a package which people are used to already in terms of the quality.
Yes. So that for me was the highlight. Was I thought Tesla was it when it came to EVs, and I still think Tesla is it when it comes to EVs. But I'm very impressed with the traditional OEMs and the build quality and the cars that they've produced. They they've just got to get the volume gain going with lower priced EVs. That's
kind of the challenge right now, and be patiently waiting, because I think a lot of people want to get their hands on any EV at this point. I saw a beautiful iX this morning, and yeah,
I've seen a few of them on the road now, which is very, very, very nice.
Whilst we're still here on Electric Avenue, I think it's time to move on to the next part of the show, which is talking about the increasing fuel price and a little bit of kind of the Eskom woes. It's currently load shedding again around the country, and I know that for you is probably, as an EV owner, a blessing. Not a blessing that it's happening, but rather the fact that you've kind of made that jump. Do you feel like you've made a saving as a result on fuel and on power?
Whether this fuel problem, price problem at the moment came or not, the saving would have been there. So this just kind of exacerbates that saving. It costs me, if I had to kind of equate it down to rands and cents, it costs me less than 180 rand to fill my I-Pace. And I'm using 20% of the battery a day. That's if I drive. With the hybrid working environment at the moment, I'm driving a lot less than I used to before COVID. But in saying that, so if I'm using 20% a day, let's say I use 20% 5 days a week, 20% of 180 rand is I'm using 36 rand a day to drive.
So let's see here. So basically, there is an interesting, someone did some research, I think it was Jaguar, who was looking at petrol, diesel versus EVs. And they kind of did a comparison. Essentially, if you're using 30 kilowatts per hour, it's about 60 cents per kilometer in an EV.
And that's overstated, because my EV uses anywhere between 20 and 23 kilowatts per hour.
So
Sorry,
you can
kilowatts per
actually
100
get
kilometers.
less than 60 cents per kilometer, essentially.
Yeah.
That is insane. That is insane. I did see a video of a guy who owns a Tesla who was stating that his Tesla is now paying for itself. And that's what you're saying. Eventually, at some point, the saving that you make on fuel will add up or equate to the price of the vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, the downside is you've got to pay the money up front. So
Yeah.
I've had to install the solar in my house. I've had to pay for a car at a price point that I would never have paid.
Of course.
But I did that because of the bleeding edge. So that you got to do up front, and then you got to wait for the return because you're only saving it on a monthly basis, versus fuel costs and electricity costs.
Are you seeing more people driving EVs on the roads?
Not as much as I'd like. I've seen one or two iX40s.
Yeah.
I've not seen the Volvo yet. So I'd like to see more, and I would notice.
Yeah.
I would notice.
I've seen a few.
I haven't
it's
seen
definitely not
seen one iPace on the road.
I haven't seen a new e-tron yet, but I mean it's brand
Yeah.
spanking new, so we'll see in a few months if
There's only about
changes.
1,500 of them on the road at the moment, so it's really difficult in 12 million cars to notice an EV.
For sure. Just before you wrap up, I just want to know if you had to give OEMs any advice, what would you say to them to get more people to buy EVs?
Everybody put pressure on the South African lawmakers to come up with those incentives sooner rather than later.
Okay.
In a positive way, not in a negative way. Put pressure on the lawmakers to get this done.
I'm seeing the discussion happen everywhere. A lot of people are more interested in EV content, consumers that is, but that price point is just
The price point's the
still
problem.
a fight, yeah.
The EV adoption will happen if we get these cars on average to be under 500,000 Rand.
If people want to see your journey with an EV, where do they kind of...
Well, go to my Instagram account, instagram.com/George Mienie, and you'll find it.
Put you on the spot there.
That's all right.
That's pretty much all we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us again, George. I mean, we have this discussion every single week, and looking forward to the next one.
Me too.